What's up, everybody? It's Joe La Puma. You were watching the Complex Sneakers Podcast. As always, I am joined by my two hosts, my two friends. To my right, Mr. Matt Welty.
We're here.
And, of course, to my left, Mr. Brendan Dunne.
We're very much here.
We are. A lot to talk about.
Spicy week.
There's a lot. Some weeks there's not a lot of sneaker news. Mm-hmm. Some weeks there are. Some weeks there's a ton. I feel like there's a ton.
Oh, there's a bunch.
And, you know, we had to shift some stuff around because we didn't think we were going to get to these topics today for this week. But we made it happen because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and then I guess the other part of the disclaimer, I don't know how important it is, but when you hear the episode next week, we recorded that one before this one. So.
Maybe some dated football stuff in there. Just let it go.
Yeah,
you know?
You don't come to this podcast to hear us talk about football.
Exactly.
Right? They don't?
Exactly.
They come here to hear us talk about what our meals on the weekend. And,
exactly. And this one, I feel like
superintendent activities.
Straight to finish, it's going to be a lot of sneaker news.
Yeah. The one big one, and Joe, I hope you saw this, but Welty has entered a sneaker raffle.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that. And he's a man of his word. He said that on this podcast that he was going after the brown Tom Sachs general purpose shoes.
You put it out into the ether, right, saying you want to see me do it.
Yes.
So as, you know, as things align, as you put it out into the universe, I get a mention on Twitter, of course, saying, hey, just in case. And then someone sent me a link to a raffle at Feature
LV
in Las Vegas.
Shouts to them.
What up, AJ?
Yeah.
They had the Vans, remember?
Yeah, of course.
Love those Vans and the packaging.
I'm a longtime Feature supporter.
I've been there.
We had some fun times in Las Vegas for New Year's a few years back.
Okay.
You had some fun times in Las Vegas with DJ Tiesto at.
That was shot at Feature.
You guys talk about your what trip? The Malaysia trip.
The Malaysia trip, yeah. That was your version of the Malaysia trip.
Well, now that you bring it up, did he
get you like fist pumping? Were you in like?
Let me just say,
talk about the Vegas nights
I know we have
TSO.
to get. I know we have to get to. Yeah, it was in Feature Las Vegas. It was 4 years ago. I know we have to get the sneaker news, but the best thing to come out of that trip, besides the access.
You went to Benihana?
No, the access to Tiesto for a club. I think it might have been Encore or something. He had all of us in the VIP.
Which is not unfamiliar for you.
No, this was different though. This was 3 people, like his manager, his friend, and then the sneaker shopping crew in the VIP, like from the...
Did Dave Matthews have the glow stick out?
Hold on. A private room, and I have the most classic photo of Dave Matthews in shell shock. That hopefully he
said,
approves.
This isn't Delirious' Lounge.
That
this isn't the New Eurekan Poets Club.
That hopefully he approves from him in the club with Tiesto.
Yeah.
Were you at like a foam party or something?
I mean, it was a Tiesto date in the summer.
Yeah.
Like crazy club, and I just remember I think it was around the time maybe of God's Plan, and Tiesto, I think, was doing a lot of EDM sets.
Yeah.
And he still does, but Tiesto, it was an EDM set, and then I heard God's Plan, I was like, oh, he's about to do a hip hop, and then it just he's about to do like a hip hop playlist, for the next half hour, and then
God's Plan.
Exactly. It was like that.
Class.
But when I tell you I have the best Dave Matthews reaction photo,
We need that.
it's purple. We got to put it in. Hopefully he approves it. But yeah, shouts to Feature. I remember you got me those Vans.
Okay, so Welty, you've entered the raffle at Feature.
Yes.
For the GPS Tom Sachs shoe, the brown shoe.
If you want to just rig the raffle.
Oh my God! No! Don't rig the raffle. He needs to really experience what it's like buying sneakers in 2023. A fair shot.
Yeah.
I hope you win.
I want the shoes.
Okay.
I hope you win.
Would you buy them on resale?
I guess it depends what the resale price of it is. You know? As we've talked about recently, it doesn't seem like many shoes go for much over retail that much. So you never know.
Recently or GPS?
Recently, shoes in general. It's hard to save from a Travis Scott or a Lost and Found Jordan 1. It feels like you're hard pressed to find a shoe that released for 120 that's going for $750.
Yeah.
Recently.
Get to that in a little bit.
Can I say one other thing about Drake since you did mention him?
Yes, you're all over these. Go ahead.
the scuba shoes.
Yeah.
The flippers, the Drake NOCTA.
Let me tell you. Go ahead.
You know, are those flippers? Is that
Yes.
the right word for them? Is it?
Yes. Fins.
Yeah.
Fins.
I mean, I think the NOCTA Nike collection has been a little bit hit or miss, but I love the fact that they made this. I don't know if it's like
What
not
do you
as
think the R&D into that product
I
was?
want to know.
The wear testing?
I'm
Same
begging
parts?
people at Nike and people on Drake's team to let me interview some people about this because I just want to know how and why this happened.
Well,
and I'm
he
not
had-
mad at it.
He had done a bunch of like recent Instagram-ish or posts on Instagram, I think
Mm-hmm.
a couple months ago, where he was at some Caribbean location.
Yeah, I
where
think it's like a
Carlo?
Turks and Caicos type of
where
thing.
like there was like a girl who was a bartender there that was a model that he had kind of taken a bunch of photos with. So maybe
Yeah.
that's the vibe.
Damn, you on the Drake Doing Things account? Sheesh.
I don't even know what
I
that
need to
is.
see Yachty on a jet ski with
Yachty's
these
been
on.
in a NOCTA campaign already, though. He crushed it.
But it would make sense because remember he was wearing the shoe goo dunks that our dear friend Alex Diamond designed, and so I feel like this would be a good moment of atonement for him if he's wearing proper footwear on the jet ski, which would be none other than Free Idea Nike, the NOCTA.
Fins would be tough on a
Scuba.
jet ski.
But is that not?
No.
That's not appropriate.
Is there going to be anyone you think that tries to wear these casually?
Let me tell
my
you,
God.
the sound.
Oh, no.
No, not casually, but listen, wearing fin like let's go back to when like you
Okay.
put on fins or flippers.
Mm-hmm.
You felt like you were Thanos in those when you swam underwater with fins.
Can I get Aquaman?
Sure, Aquaman. Yeah, but like they made you go fins,
Yeah,
flippers make
they
you
were a necessary accessory
Oh, my
in the
God.
Bayshore Summers.
in a pool. It's just like, oh, can I swim the length? You know, I used to do feats of strength for myself, so I would be
What?
like,
What do you mean?
well, how long can I hold my breath underwater? And
You were
like,
trying to impress.
if there was
the
a pool,
ladies,
you
or
know,
what is that?
shouts to Carmine Martino, R.I.P.
Yes, of
Across the
course.
street, he had the pool, and I would always be like, listen, I know I could do there underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go there and back? And then it became like a feats of strength. Like, well, let's see how far. And
Yeah.
you know, you like psych yourself up. This is me like by myself in the pool, and like, oh, I could go there and back. And then like, you put flippers on. I could have went, you know, there, back, and there again.
Yeah, no big deal. So you're getting
Easy.
a pair of these.
I don't know because the Martinos don't live there
Okay.
anymore. The Martinos don't live across the street anymore.
Okay,
and
okay.
I don't know, but wow, we're really slow playing the real news though.
One more slow play thing. This is not real news, but I did go to the last day of 21 Mercer.
Man of his
Nike
word.
Lab.
Man of his word.
Hung out there. It was a desolate scene. The streets were blocked off for an unrelated reason. There was no line outside the stadium because it felt like the whole radius was quiet
Really?
in memoriam or, you know, in tribute or something like that.
Surprised you didn't like stage a shot of like
Did you buy anything?
like the LeBron powder in the air, you know?
There
Just
was
in the middle.
I don't think you could really buy anything at the hour I went by. They had some shoes that were still on the shelf, and we'll put a photo up here. But I didn't purchase anything. There was, it was very barren there. So that's the end of that. I am hopeful that Nike figures out a new version of something like 21 Mercer and what that was, because I do think it's a necessity, and I do still enjoy physical sneaker retail spaces,
course.
brick and mortar. So
Of course.
Was that a huge brick they didn't have? Speaking of Drake and 21 Savage perform
at 21 Mercer
at the 21, and then just 21. Can you do something for me?
to close it down in style.
I can see it.
Yeah, huge miss. Nike, what were you thinking? Joe, did you enjoy the Corteiz Air Max 95 rollout?
I did.
Is that the correct pronunciation? I don't know.
It's yeah.
I hope so.
I'm pretty sure. It was good.
Yeah,
It was good.
they brought back the infamous clip.
Yes,
from
and they
sneaker shopping.
changed the call out. They changed the call out. I thought it was well done.
Yeah,
Did you guys like it?
I mean, that shoe to me is awesome.
you like the Corteiz 95 a lot.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Monster Air
Okay.
Max 95s
Nice reference.
or the Iguana Air Max 95s. One of the two. I think they're.
I think there's some more colorways coming too.
I
Yeah.
like it too.
I am not that big of a fan.
It would go. I feel like it would go great with what you have on.
Oh, maybe I'll get a pair then. No, I don't know. I don't love it. I feel like I need an Air Max 95 to be in suede or nubuck. A leather
Interesting.
95 is a little bit of a tough sell for me, but I want to see more of the shoes, and I want to see the other colorways that are coming.
I'm excited for it.
Me
All
too.
right.
I thought it was rolled out. That was a good idea. Just because like to use that clip in
from sneaker shopping.
No, yeah, but it was like a very subtle way to do it.
Yeah.
Where like you see that clip, it goes up all the time, but like to tweak it like that.
And you're the 95 guy too, so.
Oh, appreciate that. Wow. And like to like tweak it with the call out that looked like we did it.
Yeah.
I thought it was good, and I think everyone had a really good response to it. So
yeah,
I mean, looks pretty. I like that.
Okay, can we get to the important stuff? Not that the
Before we get off
reference
95s.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Who's calling
I get
you?
a spam call.
Who is
Sorry,
it?
I didn't-
I'm just kidding. You don't have to say.
Welty just got a call right now.
You don't have to say sorry.
No. It
happens.
You get one of those unknown.
Yeah, you're popular. Khaled said, if the phone ring, it doesn't matter. We're in high demand. That's what it is. Don't say it's spam. Say it's someone
Leave it in. Leave it in.
asking about the Otani announcement. But I finally got the Coral Studios 2.0 on the way.
Oh, this is a huge moment for you.
I was
You've been
inspired by
pursuing
the
these Air Max
night. I
95s
was
for a
in.
long time. Yep.
Yes, I was.
That's
in-
crazy because I was actually just thinking that.
Really?
When you mentioned 95, I was like back in my head. I was like, should I make a joke about? Did you finally get the 2.0? And then
I did, and I was like, I'm wearing 95s today, and I was like inspired by the 95 talk this weekend, and I
Secured a
acquired them.
pair.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, I'll wear them on here.
Checking that off the list.
Yep.
Can we check some more stuff off the list?
Let's go.
Tiffany Nike Air Force One. The shoe is dropping on March 7th in sizes 3.5 men's to 18 men's. I don't know who's getting 18. Retails for $400 USD. The release will be available at 2 Tiffany & Co. New York City locations, the flagship next door, and then Tiffany & Co. Soho. Also on Nike Sneakers app, select partner retail stores, and Nike North America. There's some accessories that go with. Sorry, the accessories go within the collection, but they're actually sold separately. There's a silver shoehorn, a whistle, the toothbrush, the Dubré. I think the accessories are better than the actual shoe, and I think that the rollout, when it said a legendary pair, we saw that on Sunday, them kind of teasing it.
that was the New York Times, right?
Yeah, the ad in the Times. I think the ads that Tiffany have posted, the photos of like the toothbrush in the glass cup, and it says don't forget the tongue or something like that. I feel like the rollout around the shoe has been really good, and I like the accessories. I feel like everything but the actual shoe is good.
Well, it's funny to see people because the retail price is
$400.
$400. That's 100% confirmed.
Yeah,
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Okay, so the retail price is $400. People are upset about that, right? Because I feel like if it was just say there was nothing special on the shoe per se, and it was just a Tiffany Air Force One, that shoe is at least in my mind $250 plus just for being
In terms of how much Nike is going to charge for it already.
Yeah, it's because when they do the high fashion collaborations, it hardly ever comes in at the standard retail price, or even the adjusted collaboration $20 more price. And there is the Tiffany silver hit on the back.
Which they're going to charge more for.
Yeah, so they're going to charge more for it. And people are like, why is this shoe $400? And I'm not justifying it, but why isn't it $400?
Yeah. Based on what we know about Nike's retail prices and how much Tiffany is going to charge for an accessory, the retail price makes sense. But I'm not. I'm
not there for it.
Yeah.
But people are upset that it doesn't come with the Dubré.
Yeah, the Dubré, the lace lock, the silver Tiffany. A lot of people were like, why didn't they just put this on the actual shoe? And I was tweeting about the sneakers this morning, and a lot of people were making a joke of it's like there's DLC for the sneaker now. You have to buy all this additional stuff to actually make this a cool project. I wish that the $400 version came with some of that cool stuff, but that's not enough of a price based on Tiffany prices and Nike prices. I don't like the sneaker that much. I think this is a bit too far in terms of luxury sportswear. I think we've seen some good projects of that sort in the past few years. I think Nike Louis Vuitton is the best one. Adidas Gucci is good. Dior Jordan is whatever. But that formula is starting to feel a little bit stale. And the Tiffany Air Force One, in terms of the actual shoe, the actual design, just isn't that exciting to me.
Couple thoughts. One, I disagree that the accessories are the best.
Okay.
I think the box, the Tiffany shoe box
Oh, I agree
with
that.
the paper
That's
is
cool.
the illest part.
Okay.
This big Tiffany shoe box, and if I'm looking, who knows if it seems like it's these images, Tiffany the paper in the shoe is the best part.
Okay.
Next thing, would you guys? I think we've talked about it. I think maybe a nice kind of HTM type leather with the Tiffany swoosh.
That's what you'd rather see?
I think so, but here's what I would say. Would you guys have rather it be an all Tiffany blue shoe?
No.
Would you guys rather it be 75% all Tiffany or what? Because I know that you always, and you guys always say, and I think a lot of people feel this way, when you have a chance at a collaboration and you just do a lot of black, it's underwhelming.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like that. Sometimes I feel like that.
I would ask, like, not that you guys, I know you've designed shoes.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
But what would you have, like, is there one thing in your head that, like, for me, it would have been like, oh, some, like, HTM type of shiny leather, maybe?
Yeah. I mean,
but, like...
something with a little more sheen, a little more shine, yeah.
I guess I would feel, I guess I feel that I don't know if I would have loved it if they did a lot more Tiffany blue on this.
Okay.
That's kind of just how where everyone's talking about, like, oh, there's not a lot on it. I'm not sure if I would want a lot more.
Okay. I think the other thing is that, and we've spoken about this before the podcast, but the shoe, no matter what, is not going to eclipse the original unauthorized Tiffany Nike, the Diamond Dunk SB from 2005.
But which shoe is 10, 20 in history, maybe? Personally? Maybe?
It's funny. I saw
the Tiffany Diamond Dunk.
You're
for
saying
me,
a top 10, top 20 shoe ever for you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Easily.
It's funny that we're like so far down the sneaker head continuum at this point, and this is people are gonna be like, "Oh, this is old head gatekeeping." No, it's not.
Go ahead.
Shut
boy.
up.
Go ahead.
We need an alert every time.
No, just, if you don't know something about shoes, just like sit back and soak it up, and like don't call someone who's actually just talking about an important shoe that informs the shoe now a gatekeeper.
Yeah,
or
it's
old
just
head.
history.
It's just history. You don't call people who wrote history books as gatekeepers or whatever. They just rewriting whatever.
Carry on.
Yeah. So, I saw there was a post on Twitter. Some random sneaker account goes, "Which one would you want?" And they put the Air Force One on top and the Dunk on the bottom. And a lot of people,
The Air Force One?
said the Dunk, but there was a lot of people like, "Oh," they didn't even say the Air Force One. Like, "Oh, the top's more fire," and because they don't even know what the.
But that's okay.
I know it is. I get it, but it's just so like this. Maybe this goes back, and I know there was a lot of discussion over the weekend about the social clip we did on the Nike voting process, where it's like taking good shoes versus not great shoes and like trying to put them in context. And it's so weird to have people make a judgment call on which is better without knowing any sort of like context behind the story. It's almost like showing two athletes not knowing that one is like Leo Messi and one's just like some guy who plays rec league soccer, and then you're like,
but that's so much more objective.
They don't
like,
care,
the sneaker
though.
stuff is so much more subjective. So
they don't care like about the history, honestly.
but the history behind the shoe is real.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I don't. Oh, 1,000%.
We're
love
not
the
just
history,
we're not just saying
but
personal
also-
opinion. The
but don't-
Diamond Dunk was like.
But don't you think like you could forego the history and like a younger
look
kid,
at them in a vacuum.
just be like, oh, I like this one better.
No, trust me, I get that, but it's just weird sometimes to just almost like it almost feels like erasure sometimes.
Yeah, or because so much of the work we try and do is to educate people on that history. So when you see someone who doesn't necessarily know, it's like, wait, what have we been doing for the past 10, 15 years?
It almost feels like you failed at like everything that you've done in life. It was like your mission out here was to get to a point where the Tiffany Air Force One releases and the Tiffany Dunk releases, and then all of a sudden when it happens, or the shoe had released, sorry, the Tiffany Dunk had released, and they don't understand what this shoe is, and you're just like,
I failed you.
yes.
I'm taking the Tiffany SB Dunk every time.
I mean, documented. You know where I stand on the Tiffany
I mean,
Diamond Dunk.
You quoted Hove, right?
Yeah, I did in the Slack, but I don't mind.
What did he say?
I sampled your voice. You were using it wrong.
But I don't mind these at all. I like these.
I think they're fine. I just
to-
don't think they're that exciting. And again, I think everything around the shoe, the rollout, the accessories, the images are better than the actual shoe.
Man, do you wish they had? Would it have made the shoe for you if they somehow recreated the Tiffany Kid moment?
To me, I already like the ads around it. The Tiffany Kid doesn't fit in here. I don't think everything from the Diamond Dunk project fits in here.
I know it's connected. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
you're like really bullish on it being connected, which of course, like Tiffany, the first thing sneakerhead. But I'm separating it a little bit.
Okay.
I just feel like you don't get to this point
Yes.
if the Diamond Dunk never happened.
I agree with that.
I'm not saying a Tiffany Nike collaboration wouldn't have happened, but we wouldn't be sitting here having this whole long conversation about
If that didn't exist.
If that didn't exist,
Yeah.
like
Right. But that's
the
different
official
than
version makes a lot less sense if the Diamond Dunk never existed.
That's what all I'm trying to say is that when that shoe got posted and teased on Instagram, and then there's all this excitement about it, it's not just because people in the sneaker world just love the brand Tiffany so much, which a lot of people do.
It's because there's a precedent.
It's because they're one of the greatest shoes of all time.
Yeah.
Informed this.
Yes. Okay.
That's all.
Can we move on? I'm happy to keep talking about this, but we have so much to talk about, and we have great guests to get to as well.
Next.
Last week, Nike sued Bape over the Bapestas, over a handful of models that they say look a lot like Nikes, and we all know, we can all transparently say all those shoes are based on popular Nike silhouettes.
There was like a dunk. There's the dunk.
Yeah, they have a dunk-looking sneaker. They have an Air Jordan 1 style sneaker. The Bapesta, of course, been around for 20 years now, is very clearly a Nike Air Force 1 ripoff. Nobody can say otherwise. I can't believe we finally got to this point where Nike is suing Bape. I didn't think this would ever happen.
I think, I think I'd put it out there that I feel like it was almost like I want to say a necessary evil that I don't want to see a world that Nike sues Bape, right?
I don't wish a Nike lawsuit on anyone.
Yes, okay, put that out there. But if Nike has been suing everyone,
Cool Kai, John Geiger, Warren Lotus,
then why does Bape get the pass?
Yeah.
Which you tweeted about, and like that's what people would say when these lawsuits started rolling out.
Right. Every time somebody would get sued, they'd be like, "What about Bape? What about Bape?" I know what you mean, Welty, and I think that to some extent, when you have intellectual property, you have to kind of defend it universally like that, and you have to make sure that you swat down anybody who's trying to profit off of your intellectual property and the trademarks that you own, which Nike owns the trademarks for these designs. But I felt like Bape had earned its place in sneaker culture and had established so much. And to me, I felt like Bape was safe. And also, everybody else at Nike is suing as part of a current wave. Warren Lotus, Cool Kai, John Geiger.
It's a trend that they're trying to nip in the bud at this point.
Yeah, and it feels like a second or third wave thing off of what Bape did. And the Bape and the Bapesta to me were, very foundational to sneaker culture and streetwear in the 2000s. And so to me, it felt like, again, they were protected in some way. Now, we know that's not the case because for the first time it's been made public through the lawsuit that Nike met with Bape in 2009 and said, hey, you aren't allowed to pirate our materials like this. And Nike sent them a letter last year warning them about intellectual property infringement. So, again, I didn't think we'd get to this point. I think there's a lot of interesting details. I mean, even you guys know I'm obsessed with sneaker lawsuits, so I could go on about this for the next hour. I promise not to. But even like the 2009 meeting is super interesting because people have always speculated, did Nike ever have a legal issue with Bape that just didn't come to light publicly, and now we know that they met with them back then. But if you look at the lawsuit, Nike actually secured the trademark for the Air Force 1 in 2008, and the very next year they sat down with Bape, and they didn't sue them, but they said you guys can't be doing this stuff. So I have to wonder, and this is speculation, but did they secure that trademark that year in part because they saw Bape as a continuing threat and something that would grow more and more?
You'd also kind of put out a conspiracy theory to
and it's important to mark,
it's also funny
we can
because
put conspiracy theories out as long as we mark them. Or if you're speculating, just please say you're speculating.
I was surprised to see that because I know you're usually the last person to want to entertain conspiracy theories when it comes to sneakers, but you had said that your conspiracy was, or maybe feeling was, that
they had friend, right?
They didn't sue Bape because Hiroshi, who was part of HTM with Nike CEO Mark Parker and Tinker Hatfield, was friends with Nigo.
I mean, Nigo gets his name from his appearance being similar to Hiroshi Fujiwara. Like, his name comes from, the nickname Hiroshi Fujiwara Nigo, because he looked like Hiroshi and came up under Hiroshi. So that's how close they were. But I actually think that conspiracy theory is not super well informed after like reflecting on it and some people reaching out to me. I didn't realize this, but I think that Nigo and Hiroshi actually haven't been friends for the past 14 years at least, which maybe that aligns with the 2009 time. If you look it up, I don't really think they've appeared in photos together since around 2009. I think that there's still a possibility that before then, Hiroshi's close connections with Nike may have protected Nigo to an extent, but total speculation, total conspiracy theory. I don't know that.
How do you think this one plays out?
Well, I mean, I think we'll see some familiar moves in the immediate future. I think Nike will probably seek a temporary restraining order, as they often do, where they ask the court to bar the defendant from selling the allegedly infringing items. I think they'll probably go for a preliminary injunction after that. I do think that it'll just settle eventually. I mean, Nike had to settle with much smaller designers when they're doing this, because if you think about it too, like, sorry, I'm droning on again. I could keep going.
Keep going.
Like, I feel like they've been leveling up their litigation over the past few years, where the first big one to me was Warren Lotus, and then they start going after John Geiger, who feels like he has a bigger operation than Warren Lotus did with respect to shoes, and Kokai, and now they're at Bape, which is a legitimate 30-year-old company, has way more resources than these other people to defend
Bape,
itself.
You had mentioned too, because you wrote the story, where I think one of the most important things to mention was, Bape started off as like this independent brand, owned by Nigo, but then they got purchased by, and I forget the name.
IT.
Yes,
Hong Kong,
the
like
Hong
fashion
Kong
conglomerate,
like holding
2011,
which is like a considerable, sizable company that it doesn't seem like. Obviously, it's not on the level of Nike, but tangling with a company of that size is a much different.
Than tangling with a John Geiger or Warren Lotus or Kokai. And I say that to say, I would imagine this thing settles just like the others, because if they could only settle with the smaller companies,
or you're not.
I don't know. It depends.
Who could tell?
I think they'll come to an agreement where Bape has to change its shoes back to look less like Air Force Ones. And there was a period of time in the mid 2010s where they were making Bapestas starting in 2016 that didn't look that much like Air Force Ones. And Nike notes this in a lawsuit and says that
there's like a weird line that goes through.
And nobody likes that shape, because we like them because they look like Air Force Ones. And Nike is basically saying in this period of time, we weren't that concerned with them. And also the lawsuit has a lot to do with Bape's business in the U.S., where basically the way Nike puts it is after they sold in 2011, Nigo officially steps down around that time. He's out of the brand by 2013, that they weren't doing a lot of business in the U.S. for most of that decade. They're basically saying that starting in 2021, Bape's doing way more business in the U.S. They're planning to expand. They're selling the shoes again. The shoes look more like the Air Force Ones than they have in recent years. And now we have to sue. We're forced to sue.
Do you think
I feel like I'm in court TV. Dude. He's not even looking at his notes.
Do you feel like
it's not even a teleprompter?
This may be another conspiracy, or just maybe a feeling, the fact that to some extent over the past years that like Bape has essentially kind of been almost like a surrogate of Adidas.
What do you mean?
That like it almost feels like there's like an actual like partnership between the two brands.
What? How so?
Just in terms of how frequently they collaborate?
Yeah, it feels like there would never be like, not because the shoes just look like it, but there would never be a Bape Nike collaboration, because
for sure.
Like there's like, it's not just like a collaboration, and I don't know the legalities of it, but it feels like there's an actual like contract of.
I don't know. I mean, the other thing that's interesting is Bape has done sneaker collaborations with pretty much every other brand. There's Bape Reeboks, there's Bape Adidas, there's Bape Pumas. There was a Bape New Balance project last year that we talked about, right? So it's kind of funny too that Bape has worked with pretty much everybody except Nike, and we know now that that's probably never going to happen.
Seems like it.
Again, maybe we'll drop a different special where I just talk for 3 hours about the Bape lawsuit.
Listen, how much time you got? Because he could go off.
Give him your laptop and you can pull up Pacer. And
That's it. That's it.
We'll get the
Came in
Pacer.
prepared. Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But
they'll settle. That's my prediction.
Same.
Total prediction. All right. Should we bring on our guest?
Yes.
Big one today. Our guest on today's podcast had a 26-year run at Adidas where what started out as a gig in the mailroom progressed into holding the title of brand president for over 5 years. During his 2.5-decade run, he was directly responsible for every facet of the footwear business as it related to the three stripes, including spearheading the marketing, commerce, design, and driving sustainability. He was also front and center for the NMD and Boost Boom, remixing the classics and signing key endorsers like Kanye West, Beyonce, and Pharrell Williams. Today, he continues his focus on making 100% sustainable products with his new streetwear brand, Unless Collective. Here to talk about his storied career in footwear and apparel is Eric Liedtke. Eric, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Great. Thanks. I had enjoying my time back in the city.
Nice.
What a treat.
What's that?
What a treat to have you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
We said this when Todd came on. It's always a pleasure when the real execs who really run this industry can come and sit with us.
Well, I no longer am one of those guys, but I'm happy to talk about my time.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot, and just reading things, like you touched every, I said in the intro, but you touched every part of, for so long, 2 decades and a half of Adidas. You basically were involved in every big major kind of like responsibility. So happy to dig into the history for sure.
It was a lot of fun. It was like I felt like a kid in a candy store. I knew early on because I came out of school from Wisconsin, go Badgers, and went to advertising in Detroit. I was like miserable every day. Sick to your stomach Sunday nights, not wanting to go back.
Yeah.
Sounds like working in the sneaker blog industry.
And then I realized that if I'm not thinking about sports, doing sports, or haven't done sports, I'm not fun to be around. So I focused my efforts on that and met a guy named Rob Strasser, and the rest is history. So fell in love with the whole industry. And unfortunately, Rob passed right before I started Adi. But yeah.
I want to talk more about that, and especially Rob Strasser. That's an important one. But before we get there, I want to talk about the sneakers we have on because yours especially are important. So, Welty, what do you have on feet?
Wore these over the weekend. I think I maybe worn these on here before, but these are the DTLR 992s. I like them a lot.
Those are good.
Talked a lot of Air Max 95s. I'm doing the OG colorway, the neon.
Great shoes.
Okay, since we do have an Adidas veteran here,
Yes.
I guess y'all didn't think that it would be appropriate to pay tribute and wear an
We're
Adidas
going to tribute
sneaker.
the whole. We're going to tribute
the Albrecht Special.
It's not on.
The problem
we need
is
some less collectives.
We mentioned it. You mentioned it. The majority of Adidas shoes I've got in the past year, they don't fit anymore. So
Oh,
What happened?
I don't know. I actually talked to someone at Adidas recently who works on like the sizing program, and somehow they like screwed up the lasts on a lot of the
Is this a
footwear.
real thing? Because he's been complaining. He's got a campaign going for the past year or so. And obviously, you've been gone from Adidas for
Yes.
3.5 years now or so. But Welty is saying that the sizing over there is all wonky.
Well, first of all, there's numerous lasts. Like whether you're talking about a running last, a basketball last,
It was
originals last.
It was in the reproduction of retro product.
Yeah, they might be fine tuning the last for a variety of reasons. I mean, some of that's done on it's done based on robust fit testing though, so it wouldn't be done just half-heartedly. So when somebody says they fucked it all up, I would question that. I mean, Adidas is a lot of things, but they take engineering a product very seriously.
yeah. We had to bring out the Brannick device for him
No.
numerous times.
I mean,
it's right there. It's
I
actually
own-
on the Adidas box.
I own
Coincidentally,
I own hundreds of pairs of Adidas shoes, so
Yeah.
I have a general feeling of how
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was the president of the brand.
yeah.
of how they
But
fit.
I would just say, like, listen, I've always been a size US 12 and Adidas in every category I've
Yeah.
worn. It's been tradition. It's been like New Balances run short on me. It's like it's always a question of fit. So I'd be surprised if you took like an NMD R1 and you said you tried on the S1 and
Well,
they fit differently.
it wasn't that because I know those shoes they tend to have a lot of stretch in them, but it was a reproduction of it was the Kerwin Frost bounce shoe. That shoe like didn't fit at all. It was like a whole size small. It was like it fit like a size 10, and I wear 11 and a half, and it just didn't fit.
Yeah, that seems like a mistake.
And then-
we shouldn't change that dramatically.
And then the Supernova cushion, another shoe that got like re-released, and that shoe didn't fit as well. And I had talked to someone at Adidas, and they said it had something to do with like them trying to find old lasts with all the licensing programs and all this stuff, and bringing things in
Yep.
and trying to standardize it in somewhere along.
When they remake a shoe, like when it goes from
Yeah.
a sport, like
Yeah.
a Supernova,
Yeah.
when it goes from a high-end performance running shoe, then it gets picked up by the Originals guys
Yeah.
because of the dad shoe trend and what
Yeah.
have you. Yeah, they're going to put it on the Originals last, which they're going to change it from an original a running performance last,
Mm-hmm.
which will fit one way, to a Originals running last, and but that should not be a size different.
Oh,
That should be maybe a little width difference.
No,
maybe
but it was a
little
full
bit-
size difference.
Yeah,
like
that seems. highly concerning, but I can't comment much further.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
in the weeds
It's not
on
your
it.
problem
Yeah.
anymore.
Good luck with that.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
you know what fit like a glove? Mm-hmm. Unless Collective.
Oh yeah.
What do you have on
That's
feet,
what I'm
Eric?
wearing right now. The first 100% plant-based, plant and mineral-based shoe called the Degenerate. So love to talk to you guys more about that, but I understand one thing after another. But yeah, it's been a passion play of mine for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And making something 100% plants without any petrochemicals whatsoever has been fantastic. And we were able to get it through and launched last month. And more volumes around. I'm happy to say we sold out of our first,
Nice.
small volumes
Congrats.
without any advertising and just kind of word of mouth in the industry. And now we're bringing in some volumes and start to ramp up our media efforts, which is what brings me here today.
Were you always an Adidas guy growing up before you worked for the brand, or?
No, I grew up in the 70s, so Adidas, Puma, Nike were, my three main plays. And I was a swimmer, so then you got to throw in Speedo and Arena and some of those things, but not on the feet.
Are you still a swimmer? You could get the Drake NOCTA fins.
We were
Yeah,
just
those are
talking.
cool.
Yeah,
I saw
we were
those.
talking about
I don't know about walking around in those, but I appreciate it. Like if you watch the Eddie Classic, I'm a
Oh yeah,
pretend surfer.
they just had it in Hawaii. I
Yeah.
was there when they were. I was going to go up to the North Shore, but then they
Unbelievable.
canceled it the next day, and then the next week they actually.
Yeah. But if
A lifeguard
you watch
one,
that
I think?
if you watch the lifeguards, they all have a variation of those flippers. They don't have the
Yeah.
full flippers that you'd scuba dive in, but they have a half one. And then Drake took it all the way down to, basically just inspired by.
Oh, so it's not.
I don't think you could get much water moving with those things, but you could try. I don't know.
Joe's going to try.
I was going to try at the Martino's pool, but
There you go.
Yeah.
But the Martinez pool would probably work. I wouldn't take it to the North Shore.
Were you inspired by? I know you said you're a swimmer. I think it's the Mark Spitz moment where
Yeah.
he had held up I think it's like a pair of blue gazelles at the Olympics. Where
That had nothing to do with my future career plans. It was all about Rob and Peter
Yeah.
and a friend of mine, Paul Gaudio.
Tell us about Rob and Peter.
Yeah,
Rob
listen.
Strasser, Peter Moore.
So I came out of school in 1990, University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, second time. So new head coach. Anyway, I came out of there and I had a journalism philosophy degree, and I couldn't write good enough to be a journalist and make any money. So I went into advertising, which is what you do. Went to Detroit. Quickly found out I didn't like selling flowers, do advertising, or be in a suit, and quickly found myself talking to all my friends about what connects they might have with sport. A friend of mine growing up, Paul Gaudio, who ended up being creative director and head of futures for Adidas with me and has come with me to Unless. He was working with Peter doing the first equipment product, designing in Germany. And so he introduced me to Rob.
Adidas CQT in the early 90s.
Exactly. Early 90s. We're talking 92 right now. And then he introduced me to Rob and Owen Clemens, who was Rob's assistant. And this is before email. This is before really cell phones. This is like back in like old school snail mail. So I was writing letters every month trying to get in. It took me a year.
Writing letters
plus.
to Rob Strasser?
Writing letters to Rob Strasser.
Did you know at that point his character? Because everybody who's encountered Rob Strasser knows he's a fireball.
Yeah,
He's
so
a
I read
really intense guy.
I had read a great book by his ex-wife at the time, Julie Strasser, who was the story of Nike and the men who played there.
Right. Yeah.
And it was way before Shoe Dog and everything else came out. And this one, introduced me to Rob and Peter and the attitude, the personality, the volcano that was Rob, the Rolling Thunder as they called him, and fell in love with him. And after I read that book, I was like, I had to get a job there. That was like my heart. And Paul was working with Peter and with Rob. And when Paul was brought back to work with Peter in Portland, then I started to really ramp up my efforts. So it was like it took me about a year to get in, but when I did, I never looked back. And my first job was called Sweeper of Training. I think I was the second employee at the Jansen building in Portland, and I sat right next to the mailroom and helped to do whatever I could to make things happen, which included, Sunday nights. One of the sweepers always had to come in and make sure the printer didn't jam, so we could have accurate reports the next day. Because again, before
Sweeper meaning you were literally sweeping the floors.
Sweeper, I think it was inspired, yes, but I think it was inspired by the term in soccer back in the day. I've never heard it used, a sweeper that
I played sweeper. It's like the last line of defense.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that's where it came from. Again, Rob coined it.
I thought you were actually cleaning the floors.
Sweeper and
sweepers
stopper.
did everything,
Okay.
including Sunday all-night duty, making sure the printer didn't jam so we could have our sales reports on everybody's desk from Spartanburg. So it was great. It was like a startup mode. I think I joined the company. It was less than $100 million in the U.S. at the time, and it was learning by drinking out of the fire hose.
Yeah.
back in the mailroom days, was there anyone that came through the building that like you were like, wow, this is actually happening, or like any cool stories that you remember when you were like literally on the ground level?
I mean, I think back in those days, I know they're making a movie now, but Sonny Vaccaro would come through quite often. Peter was the president, which as a creative director, being also the president, then he brought in a guy named Steve Wynn, and that was mixed results, I think, as far as his cultural relevance. But I think Sonny would come in and talk about Rob. Rob had passed in October '93. I started in January '94. So when I came in, there was still this kind of mourning period for losing such a presence in the building, and Peter was trying to hat on as best he could, and then he brought in Steve. So I think Sonny is probably the biggest personality that came through, and then of course Kobe followed him, and Tracy followed, and so it's like there was then these young guns coming up. But I mean, I still have a basketball where Kobe signed it, Kobe Bryant.
Wow.
Before, somewhere in my collection in the house. So it's just an interesting little tidbit of like, Kobe didn't sign Kobe Bryant very long.
Yeah.
Were you in those conversations at all,
No.
or were you junior enough at the company?
Was delivering sales reports to the right desk. So I was in training. So I was working with the guys, trying to grow the training footwear and apparel business, primarily footwear, with Steve Castledine at the time, who was a business unit manager. It was really just him and I, and then we started to staff up. But I would work directly with John Epstein, who was a legendary sales character who called here at Foot Locker in the building. I would work with all the sales agencies, and I'd go on big sales trips. And then, back in those days, you would check in 15 bags of full of shoes at the curbside, and give the guy $20 or whatever to not to look the other way before we had regulations, and just and meet the sales guys who pick you up in some big Tahoe or a Suburban, and off you'd go and start knocking on doors. Wow. First presentations I ever did was at Champs to a guy named Tim Geis. I always remember.
What were the sneakers you were trying to sell in that period?
I was pretty proud. We'd come up with this compelling concept of Strong Side and 4.3, which were two shoes about in training. We didn't call ourselves cross training. Nike had kind of dominated that with Bo at the time, and it was basically prime time. So we came in with training for sport. So everything we did was about training for speed or training for strength. And so instead of going down the force flight type model, we went into 4.3, which was the best 40-yard time at the time, and strong side being a strong side linebacker. So I was pitching those types of things. Yeah. 4.3 still makes a comeback once in a while. It was a pretty unique design if you're familiar with it. But
did you feel in that moment like you were still in the sneaker wars? I mean, we think about sneaker wars and, when Nike and Reebok were kind of really going at it in the 80s. When you got to Adidas and throughout the 90s, was Nike your intense rival? Was there hatred there? Were there trade secrets around town? There was, because everyone, if you're competitive, which everybody in the industry was back then, everybody was an athlete or former athlete, you have to take that on. And the big battles we were having weren't in basketball, what it was in soccer. Remember, Nike had come out and very purposely claimed that they were going to be number one in soccer by 1998, and then they were going to be number one by 2000, then number one. So they kept throwing that out. And then there was a battle for the U.S. national team back in the day. There was Adrian Leak was running our running BU at the time. Legend.
And he would go after Alberto Salazar in the Hood to Coast. There was some classic. Adrian.
So there's an Adidas team of Hood to Coast, and there's a Nike team of Hood to Coast.
And Adrian would call ours Rolling Thunder. And then this is back when Salazar was sponsoring all of his athletes to come in, so they would really go like it was professional. And so Adrian would put his professional team against it, and so there were things like that were much more local.
I heard that there was one Hood to Coast. Sorry, this is like you're right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
right now.
I know.
You go 40 minutes on this, but that Phil Knight had a helicopter and he was watching Hood to Coast from above to make sure that the Nike team was succeeding.
I can't comment on Phil Knight's activities. I did not know that.
See the helicopter above?
I do know
like
that. I do know that Salazar was very offended at some of the language we put on one of our vans about being drug free and things, and contacted and reached out to Adrian personally and
really
said, "You've gone too far." Yeah.
Alberto Salazar got mad because you made a joke on your Adidas Hood to Coast van that maybe he was doping or
providing dope to his athletes.
And we know now.
We know now that Adrian was probably right.
Well, and also probably a lot of athletes across all the brands.
Yeah, listen, I'm not here to. I'm just saying, like, that was kind of. You asked me about the rivalry, so I'm not here to comment on doping in sports. But the rivalry was there, and it was hometown, and Peter and Rob both came from Phil's inner circle, so there was all of that background that was fun as a youngster growing up in the industry to be a part of and to feel that vibe. So I can't say like we had Dion or anybody walking through the buildings, but we had that, and it was like you said, it was a kid in a candy store for 26 years.
You talk about soccer. I want to go back to it. Like Adidas, the roster of soccer players is football players, it's so impressive. Like, what do you think really like broke through for the endorsers? Like, talk about Beckham, who has like a lifetime deal, but what do you remember around like the soccer competition and like the high points of that?
I think, listen to me, Nike was very specific in their approach to soccer. They knew how they took over football. They knew how they took over basketball. They knew how they took over running. So they're like, okay, we're going to spend and grab every up-and-coming athlete you could have. And, and again, we're jumping around in time here, but, Beckham was the crown jewel in the Adidas, team for a long time. And then we had Zizou come in with Zinedine, and he so we had the preeminent players out there from best in class. They then went and got everybody else. So they went and they grabbed the Ronaldos, they grabbed the Neymars, they grabbed the Rooneys and things. So they started to really make sure they invested very smartly in their scout teams. They had robust, I would say, and I can't comment for what they did or how they did it. All I can do is from observing it as a competitor is that they had a lot of money to invest, and they overspent on soccer for years and years and years, not just from a scout team, but developing athletes as they come up. And if you remember, Messi was a Nike player real early, and we were able to get him out of there through legal battles and things like that. But we got him out when he was just becoming the star that we now know him to be.
Were you involved in that?
I was not. I didn't go over I was very U.S. focused until I jumped over in 2006, end of 2006, to backfill for Uli Becker after the infamous Reebok acquisition.
Yeah.
Was there like a lot of disconnect? Because you said being U.S. based and obviously Adidas being European based. I remember hearing stories. I mean, you talk about this era of Adidas. There's the massive rebrand with Peter Moore getting rid of the trefoil.
Not getting rid of it,
but putting it to originals. But I mean, as the main branding of the company. And I remember hearing a story that back in like the 80s or the early 90s or the 80s that Horst Dassler didn't want to like release a lot of the Adidas product in the States. So when the 90s rolled around, there wasn't like an overflow of everything that the brand was creating that was releasing in the States. Did you feel like the disconnect between the European and American side of the company at the time?
I can't go way back before my time. What I can tell you is that there was always an us versus them internally, and I think that's a cultural thing. Like the German-based employees, the headquarters wanted the U.S. to be disciplined and execute the plan, and the U.S. wanted to tell the Germans what to do all the time. So it was always like this back and forth. And I think if you look at any company, there hasn't been a lot of successfully based German companies in the U.S. And we can talk about Mercedes, we can talk about a few different ones, so it's BMW, Porsche, and all the auto machines. But I think there's always been a bit of a hard edge there, because the Americans, as we are, we always think we know best, and so it's very hard when you're not headquartered here to drive the ship. And so it was one of the things I had to fix when I took over the role of on the board, the executive board role, to try to figure out how we can work together as a culture and point the guns out, as we used to talk about. So instead of at each other.
How different did Adidas feel in the 2000s from the 90s? Just because I feel like when you came to Adidas in the 90s, it was, in terms of America, kind of a fresh company. Do you feel like it had matured a significant amount by the time the 21st century rolled around? Like, what felt different in the business?
Yeah, I think when I started, it was we were, the brand had been basically in hibernation for a long time, and I think Nike even famously calls it the sleeping dinosaur, the sleeping giant, or whatever the expression was. But and I think what Peter and Rob were able to do was to ignite it a little bit, and part of that was getting a lot of the creation and moved over to Portland. So they were able to make their own products for a lot of the categories, originals in basketball and some of the other ones. I think some of the categories did not move over, like running and some of those products. So there was a split creation center between Portland and between Herzogenaurach, and I think you could feel that tension, but it's still, because the brand was waking up and because the brand was doing a lot of things that were right as far as scaling the business. We caught magic in a bottle and were able to grow unbelievably through most of the 90s up until the mid 2000s, when things started to fall again.
What was that period like in terms of the slowdown in the mid 2000s? Yeah.
It's very disappointing. I mean, I think what happened then is that I think we got to a certain size. I think that we were trying to answer all things to all consumers. And it was there's a lot of different, when you're growing that much, the Chinese market wants something, the Brazilian market wants something else, the European market wants something, the American market. If you don't have all that lined up as far as how you go to war with your product creation, with your storytelling, with your advocacy, it's difficult to line up. So it was frustrating because not anybody was getting anything 100% what they wanted. So I think that led to a couple of different profit warnings and some investor turmoil and some upheaval at the board, which brought me to the board.
You talk about the low, but when did you feel like the moment was like the momentum was back?
When we came out of so basically, like, long story short is we had a strategic business plan that was written for 2015, and it was called 1711 was the handle that everybody would walk around. Everybody needs to understand what their strategic plan is, right? And 1711 was based on very numbers. Obviously, we talked about operators earlier before we came on the air. So the 17 was, hey, let's get to 17 billion euros in sales, and let's get to 11% margin on the bottom line. It's great operational targets, and you need to have those.
Yeah.
But no one gets out of bed for that. And no one starts to get imagine if, this is a great story opportunity for us to really do something different. So that combined with over-reliance on TaylorMade Golf as a group and over-reliance on Russia as a sales channel and retail distribution led to a lot of issues that all of a sudden the bottom kind of fell out, and we had 2 profit warnings. And that's what I said, the board kind of needed to be reset. And that's when Herbert and the supervisory board appointed me to the executive board member, Global Brands in America, brand president. And basically Herbert said, hey, he gave me 2 great words of advice. He said, reset the brand and don't ask me for permission, ask for my advice. And I think that's a great way to go into, if you want to empower anybody, say those things, right? You don't reinvent the brand, don't just reset it the way it needs to get, and don't ask for my permission, ask for my advice.
We had Stan Smith on the podcast, and we had the conversation of when Adidas relaunched the Stan Smith at like the end of 2013, 2014.
Yep.
I think it was January 2014 when the shoes came back out, but he had talked about, the strategy at Adidas where they had originally approached him and were like, we're going to stop making the shoe for like 2 or 3 years. And he just thought that, well, I guess I'm done with Adidas. And
scarcity works, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that, so Arthur Held did that, who was, the GM of Originals at the time. He's now managing director of Europe. And he took some bold decisions. I mean, I think that you asked me when the energy started to come back. It's like we wrote. So if I can get to that, so basically we said, okay, now we need to have something compelling, and so we gave ourselves a big why, right? We said, through sport we have the power to change lives, and with that why, we got to work. We got to work on the culture, which basically we focused on creating a creator culture of confidence and collaboration, and basically creativity that would allow for people to make mistakes and move fast. We then focused on the business operating model, and I think again we talked about this off the air a little bit. Back at the time, Adidas was not making the same kind of money anybody else was. So, the CFO at the time, Robin Stocker, would always put in my face, hey, VF makes more money than we do. Under Armour makes more money than we do. Nike makes more money. And I said, well, let's have a conversation about why. Let's look at the operating model. What do you mean? Well, their operating models are brand led and geographies execute. Ours is financially driven and geography driven. So it's like we were very much financially driven with the 1711 road call, and the markets had the control of what they wanted to range and what they didn't want to range. At Nike, there's no market that's ever had that control. It's headquarter driven, just like at Under Armour at the time. It's headquarter driven. Here's the brand. Here's the price. You guys go execute it and put it in the market. So it was always just the opposite of Adidas. And so that's what, basically tore us apart a bit. So we had to change that. We did that through something called brand leadership. And then we wrote a strategic business plan on how to execute. So we did culture, operating model, and then we did strategic plan. Within that strategic plan, now I get to your point, we said, okay, how do we create the new? And we have to, again, be confident enough to take risks and be confident enough to do things that are unexpected. And shutting down Stan Smith for 2 years or a year and a half, I think it was the right answer because we were overselling it. And I would love to see bold moves like that being done by the Three Stripes today. It's like, when are you going to start to take those moves again to really limit and protect your grails, if you will?
That era was so exciting that led into that too, because around 2015, then you start to get NMD, Ultra Boost.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you
But
first?
that didn't happen by mistake. That all happened
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
we basically released the greatest potential we had, which is our employees.
Yeah.
To be great.
Do you remember like which of those models you first saw that you knew was going to be huge?
I mean, it started before that. It started, maybe not so much in the U.S., but it started with the ZX. The ZX coming back was the first one that Arthur and his team did, and they kind of led the comeback. And then it was basically Pharrell with the stands, as we came out with that. And then I saw the NMD, and I was like, okay, here we go. And at the same time, remember, I had been working with Boost from my previous job as head of sport for a long time, and Boost wasn't gaining the traction we wanted. It was great. It was
Nike
great.
was trying to get Boost at one point, or they passed on it, or something like that. Puma.
Puma had relationships, and I'm
BASF.
not sure legally where that all hashed out, but they
Sure.
had a relationship with BASF, and we were able to get in there and scoop it. But anyway, so I'd worked with Boost for years, and it was the best running innovation ever since, I still say it, since Air. It was like for 35 years, the industry was kind of held hostage to Air as a cushioning thing, and Boost came up and kind of changed that whole dynamic. But remember, people said it looked like styrofoam.
Yeah.
People said it like it didn't. It looked funny, and that was internally and externally. And so we were creating a very niche running performance product. It was winning marathon after marathon, much like the carbon plates that you're seeing out there today. But then we got into Ultra Boost OG, which came out as really like the defined silhouette that we could take that forward. And we did something pretty smart with Kanye at the time, where we redid his deal, and we asked him to, or we didn't ask him, we put in the deal that all of Kanye's new Yeezy shoes would have Boost inside. So that just accelerated Boost to a 3 to 5 billion business that it is today.
With he was obviously aware of Boost and how successful it was. Was it tough to convince him to?
No. He wanted most of the artists that I worked with all want the latest innovations, from Stella to Ye to Pharrell to nobody wants to be on the outside of Beyonce. They all want to be at the cutting edge of innovation and how they can interpret that. And many of them, most of them, all of them want it first. They want to be the ones that that bring it out. And
yes.
It's like, okay, well, sometimes we can do that, but sometimes you have to put brand first.
So when he wore the all white NMDs, and he also
Halftime.
wore the black and purple ones. There's like
All white Ultra Boost.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the halftime at the
Yes.
There
Bulls?
was, but he was also, I think, before that too, he was spotted wearing, I think it was a pair of like compression pants and a pair of shorts and the black and purple. Walking
Yeah,
through.
the Grail, the original. He was walking in New
through
York.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was that like just his decision to wear it, or the brand kind of like was like, hey, we want you to wear this to build
At that point, it was all him.
Yeah.
He wanted to represent the brand, of course, and we were paying him handsomely to do that. But it was basically his choice to then style himself based upon what he wanted in the brand. So he chose that, and that obviously helped. I mean, the jump at the halftime of the Bulls game was, to me that was an Air Jordan moment for us.
Wow. 2015, he's at the Bulls game. He wears the all white at halftime. So if you can, Air Jordan moment, what is that like? What is that like? We see it, we were covering it,
Yeah.
but what is it like internally when that happens? He's like, you just see it.
Yeah, it's super exciting, right? I joined the board in September 14, so I'm trying to do all these things I said before. I'm trying to get the culture so that we stop fighting each other and get it all pointed out and reset that. I'm trying to build a new operating model that's brand led and not sales and finance led. And I'm trying to script this SBP, and all that happened in the course of 12 months. And I had a baby girl in April of 2015. So it was a bit hectic time, but that was a highlight, obviously. Wow. And I don't feel like I slept more than 6 hours or 5 hours anytime. And I don't want to be one of those classic entrepreneurs that you should only sleep 3 hours and then you should fast and then cold plunge in the morning. That wasn't me at all. I was taking plenty of time, but it was crazy exciting time of my life. And you have to remember, I was 46 at the time, I think, and I didn't know. I didn't know everything I was trying to do was going to work out. I mean, you do what you think based on your gut and your best guess, based upon at that point 20 years in the industry, and working in both the U.S. and here in Germany, and it was a ride of a lifetime. But that was key point.
What
As
about-
was All-Star Game here in Madison Square Garden and things like that.
How about when he dropped Facts, his Nike diss song? How excited was Adidas about that?
That one wasn't as excited as
Really?
It's fine. Listen, I love Kanye's music.
Yeah.
I always have, always been a listener. So I love the album. I mean, Facts is great, but I think it was.
I would think that if I were an
was like
Adidas
the
employee at the
anthem all
time,
of a
I'd be hyped. You know, like he's
Of course, you're not hating it. I'm just
Right.
I'm a walk the talk, not a talk the.
okay. Fair enough. When
Kinda
he
guy. I grew up in
first
Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, so I like to leave. I like to let my footprints speak for themselves.
got it. When he first came to Adidas from Nike, were you involved in that at all? I know Wex was one of the main people who
Yeah,
orchestrated
so
that deal. But
I was not. I redid the deal, but Wex and Herman Deininger, who since has passed, they went down and met during Watch the Throne tour in Zurich, I believe it was. So they met in the green room with Jay and with Ye. So I was not there, but Wex was there with I think Herman and a few others.
Because I know we've spoken to Wex, and I think it was maybe at Complex Con when we did full size run Wex in like 2018,
Years ago, yeah, I don't
2017,
know.
where he basically at that point, like pre Kanye at Adidas, he basically was like, I used to like pray every morning that like something would change with this company because I just thought it was like going to go out of business, that like he was going to lose his job and the company was going to go under. Did you have that feeling before all of that? Or?
No, I think there was frustrations that were building up because the internal dynamic that we were. I mean, listen, one time I was heading up U.S. footwear, and I had to go to Germany 14 times in 1 year. Just because I believe that you don't win, because the idea of being a U.S. employee at that time was to get the Germans to let you do something, and to get the Germans to listen to your feedback so you get better product for the market or whatever. So imagine the energy and time consumption that would go into that kind of conversation to go over there 14 times in 1 year, and that's before there was a direct flight between Portland and Europe. So it was like, here I come Cincinnati again, and it was pretty brutal. So. But to me, that was important for me to build the relationships with them. So then when I pick up the phone and say, I got to have this at this price point or this colorway, they would listen and not just be, okay, you're just another silly American. We got this covered. So to me, that was the dynamic. So I can't speak for how Wex was internalizing that. I was internalizing as it was just a tremendous waste of energy and resources versus, really focusing on the consumer. So when I did get to the job where I could affect that, I made sure that everybody had a role to play and that everything started to point towards the consumer, and we became much more consumer obsessed, which led to R1 and OG and 350 and some of the other things that we had to do. So it was a tough time, there's no doubt, and I would be remiss if I didn't say I was answering the phone at that point.
You talk about the disconnect. Do you ever feel like you got passed up for CEO because you're not German?
Wow. I don't think it had anything to do with my it might. Who knows? I mean, I can't speak for the supervisory board. I was disappointed, extremely disappointed that we went external for a CEO when they brought in Casper. I think they undervalued not just me, but brand advocacy at the time and storytellers and people that come from the brand. I think this industry, because it's built on objects of desire, needs to be run by brand people. Mm-hmm. And when you put operators on top, there's always a decision, supervisory board that has to decide. Do you put a brand person on top, supported by operators, or do you put an operator on top and supported by brand people? And I think that was a decision they made. I get it for the aforementioned reasons of not being profitable like our competitors were at the time. I respect the decision. I mean, I stuck my nose in there and fought for the brand for 3 more years after that decision. But at a certain point, I had things in my head that I had to express outside.
Did you internally feel defeated to some extent, though, or no?
I'm a competitive person. I like to win, so I would say yeah.
You were winning at that period though, that mid 2010s.
We were on a run.
Yeah, the just the momentum of Adidas at that time was
fantastic.
So,
I mean, we grew. We put $5 billion of revenue on the top line in 3 years. Put $7 billion on the top line in 5 years. I mean,
how big is something like NMD in that?
I can't speak to numbers. It's certainly well. I mean, at the time, I can only speak to probably less than 250 million. Mm-hmm. I mean, in that neighborhood though. But it sets the pinnacle, right? So it sets the edge for people to buy, derivatives of that, whether it be through Boost or other pieces. I can't say what it got to though. I think NMD had a second birth after I left with some of the colorways and things they were doing. So the R1 I can't say how big they took it at that time.
We had Paul Middleman on the podcast, and he basically talked about like the Pharrell deal coming to fruition at a McDonald's in Germany. I think that's what he said, right?
Probably in Herzogenaurach, right?
Yeah, basically he was like
one McDonald's in the entire.
Yeah, basically like they were in the drive-thru and they were like talking about Adidas deal and like Pharrell was like into it. What do you remember about like working with Pharrell and how that deal came about? And like just I think Paul also said like he would just like sketch on napkins in hotels and stuff like that. Pharrell.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting Pharrell. I had the pleasure of working with Pharrell. He is an unbelievable, not just talent, but human being. But I would say that all that kind of work stuff was done by Paul and Wex and some of the others. I mean, Nick and the guys that worked with him day in and day out. I've smartly left the styling and the creative management to others. I knew how to empower people and let them go and run that the way they seem fit. So loved meeting Pharrell the time we had together, and I've met with him several times and stayed in touch with him since I've left. But I did not have the opportunity to work hand in hand with him like others.
One random question. What was your go-to sneaker when you worked there in the last like decade out of all the ones?
It was the Samba or it was Ultra Boost OG.
What do you think about the Samba moment that's going on now?
I love the Tito. I mean, it's a fantastic look, and I'm glad to have it back. I need to buy a few more. But
you have to buy Sambas?
Today?
Yeah.
No, yes.
Come on, Eric. You could text somebody.
I'm sure I could text, but I want to support the cause. You know,
okay, but at least
I can
you
also
buy them
afford
at the employee store.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a yes. I can. I could get into the employee store
if you needed to.
If I needed to.
What was the feeling like when, we're talking about Adidas rising up in 2014, 2015, 2016, and then right around 2017, you kind of see Nike kind of got woken up a little bit, and they do Off-White, the 10, Air Max 97 comes back, huge shoe.
And they cleaned out Ye's entourage.
Yeah. What was that feeling like? I mean, I guess maybe in my head I'm thinking it's like, you're a football team and you're the underdog and you're winning 43-17, and all of a sudden the other team starts scoring a few touchdowns and it starts getting close and you're like, wait, we were up 20-something points. How are we losing the game right now?
It's funny. I mean, I think investors always used to ask me that, like, when are you going to beat Nike? And I said, well, tell me when the game's over. So it's like, you tell me the end of the game, and I can develop a strategy to tell you how we can win. But like, I can't just say, inevitable we're gonna win. I think that's not what you want to do is somehow build in your culture and your mindsets. How do you keep building on top of S curve after S curve after S curve, if you will? And I think what you're mentioning is we had an S curve run with all the things we talked about, whether it be the R1 or whether it be the OG or whether it be Ye or all the different things kind of. Pharrell, it put us on this growth, and what I've learned over time is you have to be playing the next S curve when you're hitting before you hit the plateau. If you hit the plateau, then you're in trouble. And I think one of the things looking back, I would have been much more adamant about what's next and not rested enough. And I think that would have prevented a Virgil from leaving. I mean, I had tons of conversations with Virgil when he'd come along to Herzo with Ye. Travis, everybody.
Wait, did you
was.
Pitch? Did you pitch?
Yeah, how close?
Them?
How
we
close?
couldn't. Wex and I would always talk about it. I mean, Ye would say, "No, I'm the guy." So it's like, then that's fine. I get it.
You
but
couldn't work with Virgil.
Listen. I mean, I don't want to say I ever asked the question that directly,
Sure.
but the air in the room would go into one person's direction.
Did he ever recommend anyone else to you guys?
Not to me specifically. I think we would always speak to him about different things and different people and different opportunities. But I think Ye's a unbelievable creator, and he would demand resources, as you can imagine. So, to me, to get back to your point, it's like I think when we saw Nike start to put some wins up, it was not. We knew they would. Nike's Nike. They're unbelievable. But the playing of our game, which is what I like coaches speak. Let's focus on what we can control. I think I would have done one thing differently, which is I would have put more focus on not resting on some of these great wins we had, but really doubling down on what's next. And I think that's just some reflection I've done since I've left. But some of the things we waited till we plateaued, and then it's hard to jumpstart.
This one is maybe more of a Wex question, and we did get a chance to ask it, but I got to ask you too. Do you remember when Adidas was trying to sign Drake and how far along that got?
Yeah, it's probably more of a Wex question.
What can you tell me?
Yeah, listen, I was part of it. I was not in the room.
Yeah.
I was in the room with his people. I was in the room during the plan and the strategy and designs and everything else, and I was in the room when it fell apart. So, but I was never
Why
in the
did it
room. I
fall
was never
apart?
in the room with Drake. I can't really discuss that. I mean, I don't think I can discuss that in great detail. So
Yeah.
I would just punt on that one. But it fell apart for all the obvious reasons.
Well, you talked about hearing facts for the first time. What was it like hearing the Pusha T track for the first time?
Again, like I get informed from the culture of, it's not necessarily what I feel, it's what the consumer and what people are feeling out there about us when that happens. And I think, I think, to be quite honest, I had to have Wex and a few other guys sit me down and talk to and educate me on what the background politics was and how it came to be and what the beefs were and all that stuff. So, to me, I'm not the guy that's going to be on the cutting edge of culture and understanding those things like you guys talk about. I learn from you guys every time I listen to you. So, to me, it's more about having the people that know that and manage that, and then putting them in positions to win. So, I couldn't tell you that I knew what Pusha T was getting to when I first heard it, or the 10th time I heard it, until
Right.
somebody said, "No, this is what's happening here." I was
Yeah.
like, all right.
Right.
Can you be a little more obvious?
Okay, last Drake thing. At least was it far enough along where people were mocking up designs and things like that? Was it at that point? Like were there CADs and things?
We planned 18 months out. So
Yeah.
of course we had to have a strategy with him and his team to develop things. So yeah, I'd say like it was pretty, as we've gone down roads many times with other people. It's not
Yeah.
just Drake. You
Yeah.
you prepare for these things, whether it be Messi or whether it be Harden or whoever it may be. And this one was with Drake. So of course we'd be irresponsible if we didn't have plans in place with strategies and marketing and everything else to present to his team and get feedback so that we could proceed with haste.
Yeah.
I think those things were some of the things I'm proud about, was bringing operational diligence to some of these ideas that we
Like
could
we're ready
execute.
to go.
We're ready to go. We're ready to do this, and we're ready to jump. Let's go. And when it falls apart, okay, you take that and you put it in line and you move to the next thing.
Yeah.
Eric, I was talking to someone who used to work at Adidas as well, and I asked him, where do you think everything went wrong in the past few years or whatever? And his answer he gave me was, when Eric Liedtke left, that's when everything went wrong. And the quote was, he had the sauce.
It's very nice to hear. Got a tear in my eye. But yeah, I mean, I think. What do you want me to say?
I don't know. Just,
Yeah.
Was
Like
it
I
a
said,
hard
I'm-
decision to leave?
It was a terrible, hard decision to leave.
Yeah.
I spent years thinking about it. It's 26 years of my life. Though at the time, it was almost half my life. So I will always bleed three stripes. But I had something else in my head. I'd taken Adidas as far as I could at the time. I believe in having fresh ideas, join a board and drive that. I think sometimes boards can get stale. I don't think people should sit on boards for more than 5-6 years. I think they'll have expressed what they should or they should have by then, whether they did or they didn't, and they should move on. And I think I've got this idea in my head about disrupting the entire fashion industry, because I think we are on a sustainability track. If we can pivot to that, I think we have things we need to do better in this industry, and I'm here to try to be a lighthouse for others to follow. If you
Yeah.
will.
When you left Adidas, was that immediately what you got to work on? Like how soon after that did you say?
Yeah, I mean, there was non-compete things. I made sure
Sure,
I was
sit on the bench
respectful
for
and
a while,
everything
yeah.
like that. So, but I, in my head, I was already working on it for 2 years. I mean, I think
on unless.
not unless per se, but plant-based solutions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to back up, I mean, I think we all have to understand there's a problem with plastics in the world, and if you haven't been aware of that, you should. And fashion's culpable in that. They're not alone, but 60% of fashion is coming from petrochemicals, which is some sort of petroleum feedstock. 70% probably in sports industry is coming from that. So. When I was at Adidas, a guy named Cyril Gooch walked in my room one time from Parley for the Oceans and said, "Hey, do you want to help save the oceans?" And I'm like, "I'm a water guy. Like, yeah, let's do that." I'm not sure what that means for Adidas, but let's do that. And within a year, I was presenting the Parley Ultra Boost
At the
made out of
UN.
ocean plastic at the UN in
I
2015.
met you there.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it was unbelievable. It was like, oh my God, this is like I can create change. And then we picked a fight with plastic and moved on. But that was with an awareness of plastic problem, ocean plastic problem, and things like that. As we dig deeper, as I dug deeper into that wormhole, if you will, the degradation of the planet, degradation of the oceans, what's doing to our fish stocks, what's doing to the sea mammals, everything else, you can't unsee and unhear that stuff. So as much as I could move Adi towards that direction of being plastic free, or at least recycled polyester instead of virgin polyester, fantastic. But I knew at a certain point I'd done what I could, and I couldn't get this out of my head. You can only whisper yourself to sleep so long, thinking that you're planned obsolescence of 3, 6, 9 month drops of things, wrapping people in polyester and petroleum. And what if I could do something different? And I was foolish, confident, cocky, arrogant enough to think that I did pretty good at Adi. Yeah. What if I could lead plant-based revolution in the industry, just like plant-based proteins have done in food? So let's give it a shot.
How difficult is it to do 100% sustainability in like footwear?
Yeah, exactly. I don't use the word sustainability, and that's one of my pet peeves. I think it's 100%. We're solving for end of life, and we're solving for everything we make, from this crew to the shoes I've on to the socks I've on, is made from 100% stuff that comes from the ground to go back into the ground. So it's plants and minerals, basically, right? So
could I eat it?
If you wanted to, I mean, it wouldn't harm you, just like it won't harm the soil.
That might be a cool ad campaign.
Yeah, well,
he's planning the next
we're
Adidas.
We're
planning Adidas influencer thing.
Exactly,
maybe
planting the seed. That's what we do it on. We plant the seed. It comes from the earth.
So everything we make goes back to being worm and plant food, right? Okay. So yes, you could technically eat it; it wouldn't harm you, because everything we do doesn't involve petrochemicals or any kind of chemistry involved in how you ferment the product, to create hard things. So it's incredibly difficult. Apparel. Easier, it would seem on its face, because everybody says, "Well, this is 100% cotton. That's 100% cotton shirt." But ultimately, the FCC guide sets those guidelines, and it really only needs to be 85% cotton, because they don't talk about the ribs and the closures and the threads and the dyes and the inks. Okay. We hold ourselves to a higher standard. Everything we do, everything on this French Terry crew I have on, is 100% plants and minerals. So that harmlessly goes away, and we do soil chemistry testing at the end of life when we compost it, to make sure it is ultimately going away in a harmless way.
Yeah, but then to build a shoe, that's got to be even harder.
Shoes are made of typically 7 to 11 different materials, so that's like 9 different materials. Most of them are made with either leather that's been tanned and basically a pretty harsh process there, or it's done with plastic uppers. Called plastic, polyester, nylons, whatever you may be, it's all synthetics. And then midsoles, outsoles are all 100% synthetic, except if you're using some sort of latex natural rubber, which is very rare in this industry. So, and then you use the glues. So the glues go into it, and that's a petroleum-based glue. There's no such thing as a natural glue other than latex right now. So for us to try to do that was a 3-year project.
3 years to make the shoe.
Yeah, I mean, when I left Adidas, it's been almost 3+ years. Yeah. So I started, what I could do is work behind the curtain, and I could start to talk to people and innovators and work in the venture capital route, and working with the different people in the material innovation. Because what I did at Adi was really 2 things. It was like the intersection of material innovations with BASF or ocean plastic or 3D printing with consumer behavior, and how do we change? How do we marry the two? So at Unless, I'm just trying to do the same thing, but I'm doing it from 100% plant-based feedstock. And how do I marry that with consumer behavior? How do I give consumers a chance to vote for that solution? And that's what we kind of built. So I worked with Natural Fiber Welding, which is a good partner of ours. They're out of Peoria, Illinois, which is another cool thing. You get to work with these startups that are really on the cutting edge of polymer chemistry.
That's where the IRS is headquartered, right?
I don't think so. I've been down in Peoria. I don't see IRS. Caterpillar's there.
Let me double check.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, Peoria, Illinois, Bradley University, former chemist who worked for the Department of Defense, is there with a radical way of doing 100% plant-based leathers and canvas and basically cotton that can be welded together in a clean and non-toxic way that then will come apart when you're done using it, when you put it back in the ground.
Do you think brands have a long way to go in terms of like manufacturing product like you are?
I don't. That's why we built it. To me, it was like I saw what we were able to do at Parley for the Oceans, and I think Parley for the Oceans is a multi-billion business for Adidas today. And again, I'm not privy to those numbers, but I said, hey, what if we built a brand, learning what I learned from Parley, and doing it from a better feedstock, because Parley still uses ocean plastic. But what if we use no plastic, and we build it from a startup that we found, and NFW is the best one we found from that, and we then can pilot that for, basically we engineered a regenerative creation model, if you will, which is like the materials we use, how we put it together, how we distribute it, how we collect it, how we work with composters to put it back in the ground and create plant and worm food. That's done. We're doing that now as a brand. So now I think I can now work with brands to help them through collaborative partnerships or through, ultimately being the intel inside and helping them do the same thing we've done. And I think that's my dream. I have no interest in creating generational wealth for myself, or the co-founders. We have a very specific, mission to create generational change in the industry, and doing that with the urgency that we believe the planet needs, which is working with other brands. And I think that's luckily enough. I think I know somebody everywhere, so I can get on speed dial. Talk to the different brands that are out there that need the.
Did you see? I think it was this week. A friend of ours, Hikmet, he did a collab with SpongeBob, and they made the shoes out of pineapple.
There you go.
Leather.
Exactly. So to me, it's like
I would eat that shoe.
He wants to eat everything.
I think it's great, but I would. I think we can talk about some sort of relationship on doing that in the future. I'd love to get you on camera, right, with your Adidas headphones on, and you're on less fried steaks in front of you.
I misspoke. I don't. I think the IRS is just headquartered somewhere in Washington D.C. I think maybe they have an office in Peoria.
I think they have an office just about everywhere.
Okay. Is that the one you had to visit?
I tried too hard. What? I don't know. I don't know anybody any money.
But I think the interesting thing about our industry is we used to talk about this a lot. It's about the product, but every time I hear you guys talk about the product, you're really talking about the story that goes with the product.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we used to talk about this. Torben Schumacher, who's now the GM of Originals at Adidas, we always thought it's obviously desire, our product times story times distribution. Mm-hmm. So we talk about it's a formula that if you get one of them wrong, so if they sell the Tiffany's thing at Kohl's, it's going to be a failure, right? No matter how good the product is, how good the story is, it's going to be a failure. So if you get one of those wrong, it's a zero. And it's like that really crystallized my thinking. So when we think about through the years, everything, we always had a story. Like think about the Ultra Boost. We had Ultra Boost, basically best running shoe ever. Great. We sell that at distribution that speaks to that. We had Ultra Boost made with ocean plastic. We sell that at distribution. Different story, same silhouette. We had Ultra Boost with Ronnie at Kith. We different distribution. So the thing is, you could tell stories upon those, and Nike's a master at this. They keep these silhouettes alive through story. So as we think about the stories that have taken over the industry, something for you guys to chew on, we talked about the game.
Something.
Yeah, there we
go. Right? Something for us to chew on?
Chewing on everything.
The shoe, right?
Exactly. I love the way you keep coming back to that. But let me finish this, then you can go back to
please.
the menu. Are you fasting? But I think there was an era of game, and there was an era where sports dominated everything. And that's, Jordan came out of that, and everything was about the sports performance. Deion, Bo knows, all that stuff came out of sport, right? All the stories were dominated by sport. Recently with, Run DMC, and then with Travis and with Virgil and with Ye and everything else, it's become all about the story outside of sport and about the lifestyle. Like recognizing the culture of sport doesn't stop when you leave the pitch. It goes into the hallways and the streets and the music venues. I believe the next great story area is around the world and how we give back. And if you look at the things that Nike's doing with Jordan and James Whitaker at Mania, and everything's about, the bigger picture of social justice, climate justice, and some of these things. So to me, I think what we'll find going forward is this storytelling era that's coming to life with what I think making a difference in the world. And I think that from a consumer is just as important. All of our consumers they care about the game. I got to jump higher, run faster, kick stronger. The life of do I look good, and the world.
Yeah.
Right now, the industry doesn't really give them a chance to express their world, in a positive way. I mean, we're still making them wrap their feet in polyester bags.
Eric, there's one more thing I got to ask you about.
Yep.
And I'm going to take it there because you mentioned Torben Schumacher.
Yes.
Last year,
I gave you the in.
You gave me the seg, so I have to take it. As Ye is having his public meltdown, which I think is hard for everybody to watch. There's this infamous video that comes out, and he's meeting with some Adidas people, and their faces are all blurred out. But I know you were in that meeting, and it's an uncomfortable situation. He's showing the porn video to people in the room. I think he's telling them that he wants Adidas to bring you back and make you CEO. Can you talk about that event? Can you talk about that moment?
I really can't. It's very difficult for me to watch.
Yeah.
Ye's unraveling.
Yeah.
And I can't. I mean, I think he was unjust in the way he treated Torben in that meeting.
Yeah.
And he was disrespectful, and I just want to say to Torben directly here that it was inappropriate, and I don't like the fact that I was a party to it in some way, shape, or form. I wish I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was.
I know what you mean, because I feel like even, I've had some regrets about even the way we covered Ye before it all unraveled. Like, were we not critical enough, or were we not? And then when it all kind of fell apart, it was this moment of like reflection of like, should we have approached this differently? I don't know if you had any of those feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all tend to be self-critical, and I think that's healthy. I mean, reflective and feedback is a good way to go through life and looking to always improve yourself. I think with Ye, there was enough warning signals that we all could have done better. So yeah, I mean, I wish the best for everyone, including Ye, but at this point, I'm keeping my distance.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we appreciate you talking about it. We appreciate you coming on here. Like I said, like, we don't get execs to get to come down from the ivory tower and chat with us. So,
Again, I'm a startup guy. I'm hustling. So yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Sorry we didn't get to do this when I was in the chair. I mean, I don't know why, but here we are at last. So,
real shoe dog stuff.
Yes,
too.
definitely.
That's important to me. He said at last. Get it? He took us at last. He took us
started with the last.
At last.
Yes.
The last.
You guys are good like that. You guys play that really nicely. No, it's a pleasure being here. You guys are doing a killer job, and I enjoy listening to you guys, so I can keep myself educated on the comings and goings of things in the industry.
Thanks so much, man. Unless Collective, be on the lookout. Just getting started in the I like throughout the episode you're a competitive person and your will to win. So. Definitely excited to see.
I'm not just doing it for myself. I'm trying to do it for my kids and my kids' kids and yours. So I think we need to, we shouldn't make people compromise their values for their tastes or their tastes for their values. And I think right now we're asking them to buy sustainably, and we're asking them to compromise their taste. So let's give them something that they want to rock, and they know it's doing better for the world.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you giving us your time. Yes. And this has been the Complex Sneakers Podcast. We hope everyone has a great weekend. Please like, subscribe. We will see you next week.